that they expect agents to be fired and that the current investigation is an act of political retribution.
Just in from Brunswick, Georgia, a judge has thrown out a felony indictment against a former state prosecutor, ending her trial on charges she abused her power to protect the three white men who chased Ahmaud Arbery, a black jogger, in a pickup truck before they shot and killed him in 2020. The judge cited technical errors in the wording of the indictment. The three men were convicted of murder and hate crimes. Officials in New Albany, Ohio, now say they're looking for an employee at a cosmetics warehouse in connection with last night's mass shooting that killed a coworker and wounded 5 others. Police Chief Greg Jones.
We don't have a motive at this point. From everybody we interviewed, which was quite a few people, obviously, there's no reports of any type of confrontation or any type of dispute that would have brought this about.
Waffle House is charging customers 50 cents more an egg to account for soaring prices brought on by bird flu. Diana Hunter in Raleigh, North Carolina, gets it.
It's hitting the restaurant owner, and it's going to hit the customer that's got to eat there.
CBS's Manuel Bajorquez is at a Waffle House in Davie, Florida.
The breakfast chain says the surcharge is only temporary and it will continue to adjust or remove the surcharge depending on the market. With more than 2,000 locations in the U.S., Waffle House serves about 272 million eggs each year, according to its website.
Dow down 81. This is CBS News.
Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get the parts and service you need fast from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Sherry, what have you done to your hair?
What do you mean? Does it not look good?
It doesn't look good. It looks freaking amazing. I can't believe how thick and healthy it looks. Oh, I must know your secret.
No secret. It's hair volume from New Nordic.
Hair volume, huh? Well, it certainly lives up to its name. Your hair has never looked so thick. It is gorgeous.
I was so tired of having thin and brittle hair. Ugh, and the shedding. So I figured I'd give hair volume a try. Needless to say, I'm thrilled with the results. Hey, where are you going?
I'm going to pick up some hair volume right now. My reunion's next month and I want my hair to look as good as yours.
Hair Volume is the best-selling hair tablet in the world and one of many award-winning natural health products from New Nordic, the #1 supplier of dietary supplements in Scandinavia. Purchase at newnordicusa.com or your local CVS. Available as a tablet or delicious gummy. Help your hair look full, voluminous, and beautiful again at newnordicusa.com or CVS.
The voice of reason for an unreasonable world. It's the Rick Burgess Show. Weekdays 11 till 2 on News Radio WGNS.
We're the Good Neighbor Network. FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro. FM 100.5 Smyrna. Audio and video streaming at wgnsradio.com. This is the Roundtable. A look at the news, views, politics, and people that are shaping Rutherford County.
Welcome into the Wednesday Roundtable here on WGNS. Chip Walters with you from Exit Realty, Bob Lamb and Associates, and the Blue Raider Network. And Brian Barrett is here at Radio Ranch, making it all sound like we have good sense. And he'll be with you in about an hour. And one of our favorite guests on the show is with us today. And we head to our capital city today. And Chris Davis of News Channel 5. The Capitol Hill reporter. And Chris, how are you doing, my man?
I am good, Chip. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Well, you always bring a lot to the table, and so I invite our listeners to take notes, because we have, we'll be getting a lot of info out there. We're going to talk a lot about the legislative session that is just getting under the regular session, which is getting underway, the special session that was completed, and also we're going to spend a little time at the end of the hour. You had an opportunity to sit down with the state attorney general, and about student athletes, college student athletes, and the state's position on them being paid, because it has gone farther than NIL. It has gone farther than NIL, where it is now just flat pay to play. So there's a lot to that we'll get to. So Chris Davis is our guest for the hour. If you have questions about what's going on in the legislature, you can drop us a text at 615-893-1450, and we will get those as well. Brian was able to come up with the big story of the day that I want to give Chris a tip here. He might be heading out on a story on this, that Nashville has a representative in the Puppy Bowl coming up this weekend.
Ooh, that's a big deal.
That is big news. Big news there. Well, since the last time Chris was with us, he has become a husband. And because I think it was just before your wedding, and so still married, I'm guessing.
Haven't messed it up yet.
Haven't screwed it up. There you go. Yeah. All right. So Natalie is his lovely wife, and they're doing well. So glad of all that's going on. Well, obviously there was a ton of whether it was wrangling or just whether or not wondering whether there was going to be a special session this year with the governor and his Education Freedom Act, which is the voucher plan. Kind of take us back a little bit and with the Capitol Hill press corps. I think there was a given that it was going to happen, but he kind of sandbagging of whether or not to actually call that special session.
Well, you have to keep in mind, Chip, a lot of eyes are on these special sessions. I mean, these are the only bills that they can discuss during that time. And so I really think that the governor was counting votes and counting carefully, because if this bill went up in flames and he still didn't have the votes, because if you remember, it failed in last year's regular legislative session, I just think they were worried that they couldn't overcome another loss on this. So we kept hearing he's talking to lawmakers about it, but didn't officially get the call until January, until a few weeks out from when lawmakers would actually show up to the Hill and talk about this.
Yeah. Now, to refresh folks, how close, I'm trying to remember exactly how close it came last year to passing, but it was obviously close enough to where the governor thought that they could whip up enough votes to get it done this time around.
Well, Chip, it got mired up in the committee process last year. And the big issue last year was the House and the Senate had completely different versions of this bill that did very different things. And we're a bicameral legislature up here, so you have to have them in identical versions for it to actually pass as law. And basically, it just kind of stalled out at the leadership level, where the House wasn't willing to give up on their ideas, the Senate wasn't able to give up on their ideas. And so really what you saw over the course of the summer is the governor and the Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally and Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton and their different leadership cadre really meeting over and over with lobbyists, with, vested interest of just trying to see if they could get on the same page. And so literally hours after the November election, that morning, they officially filed this unified version. And I think that was a clear indication right from the jump that this was going to be different compared to last year.
Yeah, that was at 8 o'clock the next morning, if I remember correctly, that they had called a press conference.
Yeah, no, I was covering Senator Marsha Blackburn's watch party that night, and I talked to Senator Jack Johnson, who's the Senate Majority Leader, and I said, when should we expect the voucher legislation? And he said, I'd keep an eye on the legislative website early tomorrow morning. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that'll be 10 or 11. No, it was 8 o'clock. And so I had another story planned for that day, and we were rerouted to that breaking news story for sure.
Yeah. Now, when the special session was called, and they gavelled in on January 14th, but then the special session came right after that. It was interesting because most of the time it's only one topic. This year there were two topics. There was the help for those in East Tennessee from Hurricane Helene, those who had damage, and also the educational part of it with the voucher plan, and those who were against the voucher plan, or as the governor likes to call it, the Education Freedom Act, there was fear that they were going to tie aid to East Tennessee to this. So, and then try to put people in a position. Well, he wouldn't vote for he has left this person has left those out in the dry, or in East Tennessee, and use that as a political wedge. And how much concern did you get from legislators that was part of what was going to happen?
That's hard to answer, Chip, because it kind of got along political lines.
Right.
That was definitely the claim that those that were staunchly against the voucher plan, against the educational freedom scholarships. That was what we heard over and over again. Some of the lawmakers directly in that district just would kind of ignore the question, kind of thing. I think it also kind of gets a little bit into a semantics game. So technically they were separate bills and they were debated at separate times. And there were some lawmakers that supported school choice and some lawmakers that were against school choice, but then also voted for hurricane relief. That passed unanimously.
Right.
But they were all in the same appropriations bill.
Okay.
And so really at the end of the session, for you to, it kind of put some lawmakers in a tricky spot that did not support school choice, but had to still vote for the appropriations bill, because that is what funded the whole special session. I'd also add real quick, Chip, we had a few other topics that kind of slid into that special session unexpectedly, and they passed several immigration measures to align with President Trump coming into office and wanting to align Tennessee with that. And we can talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
And then kind of an underreported topic, just because we had so many things else going on, but there was also a funding mechanism for the toll lane project that will impact Murfreesboro, the I-24 corridor, the choice lanes, as the state likes to call them. There's this kind of basically a provision that would, if the company that's going to build those roads for the state, if they happen to go bankrupt or happen to go into debt, that debt would not pass along to the state. It was kind of a little firewall mechanism. So that's part of the thing, Chip, is, usually, like you said, it's on one topic, and usually it's not during the, time period of a regular session. But we saw several really heavy bills come through with a lot of debate in a short amount of time, just about 4 days.
Well, let's touch on the school choice and kind of get really what it means, because there's always a lot of posturing on both sides of what it's either going to help or hurt, or whichever your point of view might be going into that. But it kind of give a everyman's definition of exactly how this is going to play out.
Sure. So in the first year, and they hope to implement this the next school year, 25-26, essentially there will be 20,000 scholarships made available across the state of Tennessee. 10,000 will be reserved for families making under about $170,000 joint income, and then you have 10,000 that are open up to anyone that applies. And that would give a family roughly about $7,000 to go towards private school tuition, to be able to enroll a student into private school. It could also go towards just different costs that the student might need, if you need a laptop for school, if you need textbooks, that sort of thing. And so the criticism is these are tax dollars that people are paying in that will allow a student to go out of the public school system into the private school. But the way it's designed, especially once we hit year 2, where there are no income limitations, that essentially students that are already in private school, that families presumably can already afford private school, can apply to get that $7,000 scholarship and get a break on their tuition. That's where some of the controversy comes in. The bill does a few other things. I would say they were kind of sweeteners to the bill to be able to try to get it passed. And one provision that got a lot of debate was essentially the state is saying, we are promising not to take money out of school districts' pockets, the hold harmless provision, to be able to pay for these. The criticism on that is, how long will that be sustainable? You're almost kind of funding two different school systems, the school choice of money being diverted to private school and public schools. At some point, is the legislature going to come back in and go, you know what, we can't afford to hold that funding floor? Republicans say we're a conservative state. We have conservative money policies. We think we can afford it. But we have seen in other states where this program has gotten very expensive as it's grown. In Arizona, about $1 billion of their budget now is for their school choice program. So it'll be really interesting to see this play out.
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong here, not every private school, and I don't know if I want to make sure I get this right, either does not accept those or does not qualify for those. Kind of give me what you know on that.
That's interesting, Chip. So when they did the pilot program of this in Davidson County, Shelby County, and then later on they added Hamilton County over in Chattanooga, the schools had to opt into this program. So like the Montgomery Bell Academies of the world, a high dollar private institution in Nashville, said, we're good. So I don't really know. That's one of those kind of bureaucracy. We'll see how the rubber meets the road if schools have to opt into this program. But another criticism of a lot of people of this program is a private school gets to pick their students. They are not required to take someone, with special needs.
Special ed, yeah.
Or doesn't have good grades. They can say, no, you're going to hurt our GPA. We don't want you. And so that's where, some critics of this program saying, it's not really school choice because these schools are still going to pick their students, and there's nothing that the state government can really do about that.
Yeah, so the schools are choosing as well as the parents are choosing there. And that will begin this fall, is that correct?
That is their goal. That was part of the reason why they wanted to do it in the special session. It made it to where they could ramp this program up in a really short amount of time. If it had gone through the regular session, you have to keep in mind there are certain pacing rules in the regular session. So it may have taken 6 to 7 weeks for this to pass in the regular session, and the governor thought, well, that's not enough time to get it ramped up by fall. You have to keep in mind Governor Lee has 2 years essentially left in office. He wanted to see this program go into full swing before he leaves office.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Arizona earlier. From your reporting, where was there any particular state that they were looking at and said, hey, they have a successful program here, we want to kind of, mock what they have done to build the program here in Tennessee?
I don't know if I recall a particular state that they really pointed to and say, hey, they're doing it well, but they did take a look at some states like Arizona and go, okay, we're going to do some things to hopefully not fall into that same pitfall. And so they did put some growth provisions into this program. So basically, if I understand it correctly, if 75% or more of these scholarships are taken in the first year, it gives a clause for them to expand by another 5,000 scholarships every year. So as long as there's demand, it can grow. But I think also there's some legislative approval to that, to where if the program gets too big, they can rein it in. I think that was part of the pitfall of Arizona, where they just kind of opened it up of, we'll fund as many as people are interested in, and then it just became too big in their budget. Yeah, and so I would assume, obviously, if any program within the state, if it's popular, you try to expand it if you can. And I think the hold harmless provision is something that was a red flag to every director of schools in any, and here in this county we have, you have Murfreesboro City and Rutherford County, and how did they address that within the bill that if 100 kids leave Rutherford County schools, that the funding that normally is tied to that student, how is that going to stay? Well, the way it was explained by leadership was that it's basically a funding floor. And so say, just to boil it down to easier numbers, if Rutherford County Schools has 100 students, and then next year they drop down to 90 students, they would still receive the funding for 100 students. Now, if the next year, it shot up to 110, that would become the new funding floor. And so even if students disenrolled, even if students moved, even if students, for any reason, disenrolled from that county schools, that funding floor would stay at the same level. The critique there is, especially if you have a community, let's say maybe Shelby County, where they have seen a decrease in enrollment numbers in Shelby County, at some point, are lawmakers going to go in and going, why are we still funding, these county schools for this number when the number is actually down here? That's been the critique of, is that sustainable to be able to, if numbers really do fluctuate down, to still keep that funding floor? How viable is that?
Yeah, all right.
We've been told it is, but we'll see.
Yeah. Chris Davis of News Channel 5 is with us today. You can, of course, find his work on newschannel5.com. And we will continue throughout the hour with this. I really like having people smarter than me on this show. It makes it a whole lot better. We'll take a time out, step aside, back with more after this on WGNS.
First Shot, growing in Christ with life and athletic skills.
So we teach God's Word at everything we do to implant it in them so that they understand that the only way to get through the world is with God on their side.
First Shot founder and executive director Andy Herzer.
Our focus is on our inner city here at Patterson Park.
From academics to athletics, First Shot's focus is toward building a stronger, more courageous spirit to face opportunities and obstacles that our youth confront every day. To find out more about First Shot, go to firstshottn.org.
All right, guys, if you're only middle-aged but wondering why it seems harder to keep up, you're not alone. It may be caused by low testosterone. Testosterone therapy, or TRT, can help you get back to your best. But not just any TRT, not those websites offering only basic treatments. You have to see the provider specialist at Low T Center. They offer advanced personalized treatments with over a decade of experience. At Low T Center, you'll start with a simple test and get your results in about 25 minutes. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment online. lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
At Middle Point, we want to be part of the solution. That's why we're making significant investments in proactively enhancing our facilities to integrate sustainable solutions.
Mike Klassen with Middle Point Landfill.
We invite you to learn more about us at middlepointlandfill.com.
Middle Point Landfill is an environmentally safe, economical, and reliable solution for solid waste for Rutherford County.
Republic Services, we are sustainability in action.
Looking for something to take your mind off this traffic? How about a true story of instant success? Did you hear about the two friends who went grocery shopping in Ashland City and picked up everything on their list plus $75,000? Or the one where a truck driver made a last-minute stop off Interstate 40 and drove off with a cool $1 million? All their lives changed in an instant, and yours could too. So stop by your local retailer for your chance with instant games from the Tennessee Lottery. Game-changing, life-changing fun. Please play responsibly.
There's a lot going on here. Entertainers come in 3 or 4 times a week. I'm Greg Shannon. Come and check out Adam's Place. Of all the places we checked, it was by far the most comfortable. People make a difference in your life. And here, when we first got here, they come up and said, hey, join us for dinner. They just want you to be part of the community, It just feels so welcoming.
I'm Terry Deal. Call me about Adam's Place. Phone 615-904-9111. Memorial Boulevard, across from Walmart.
This is Good Neighbor Events with Bart Walker. Brought to you by AmeriCare Pest Control and the law offices of John Day.
I've got pets. AmeriCare Services Incorporated, family owned and operated. For residential and commercial customers, we offer a full range of services. Our services include one-time, monthly, and quarterly pest control, termite control, moisture and fungus control, automatic foundation vents, and more. Licensed, insured, and bonded for your protection. 893-7111. Call the best of the best to get rid of your pest. AmeriCare Services Incorporated.
WGNS encourages you to shop local. Let's patronize those local mom and pop businesses and help our economy. Valentine's Day is not that far away. Celebrate love early with the Tennessee Philharmonic's Valentine's Concert. That's on Tuesday night, February the 11th at 7 o'clock. And it's at the View of the Fountains of Gateway, over on Medical Center Parkway here in Murfreesboro. You can get the tickets online at the Tennessee Philharmonic's website. Again, the date, Tuesday, February the 11th. Listen closely. Rutherford County's Retired Teachers Association meets next week on Tuesday, February the 11th at 1:30 in the afternoon. And that's at Greenhouse Ministries. And Mary Watkins, the director of the African American Historical Society, is the guest speaker. Once again, that's the Rutherford County Retired Teachers Association. Retired teachers, you need to be at that meeting, Tuesday, February the 11th at 11:30 at Greenhouse Ministries. From News Radio WGNS, those are Good Neighbor events.
Rutherford weather.
We'll see a few scattered showers and thunderstorms here this afternoon with cloudy skies, a high in the mid-60s. Tonight, chance for rain and storms alone here, 59. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki on News Radio WGNS.
Currently, it's 52.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. Are you ready to take control of your energy usage and save money? Download the MyMTE app to track your energy consumption, pay your bill, and even report outages right from your phone. It's free and available now in iOS and Android.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at wgnsradio.com.
If you miss any of our content today with Chris Davis, you can catch it on the podcast section of wgnsradio.com not long after we get done today. But Chris joining us, looks like an audio booth at the Big Nickel. Am I correct?
An editing booth.
An editing booth.
I'm actually in Brian McKeegan's editing booth.
All right, well, tell my man Brian. He is a good guy. So tell him hello for me. We talked about the voucher plan. We also in the special session, you brought up a couple of things, but one of them we touched on a little bit, and that was aid to East Tennessee. What did the legislature decide to do to help folks out that were victims of Hurricane Helene?
So the big thing is property tax forgiveness. So essentially, if you lost your home in the flood, you would not have to pay the property taxes bill this year because you don't have much of a home to be, paying the value on. So they gave some forgiveness there. They also gave some direct funding to these counties. A lot of these are not as affluent counties out in Upper East Tennessee, to where, the federal government will reimburse counties up to a certain point, but not 100%. And even some of those lingering 10% of costs were just too much for some of these counties. So there's some direct funds, but I think one that will have a really big impact statewide is they basically set up a governor's disaster relief fund in the future, to where instead of having to, get the lawmakers together to be able to fund something, the governor would have a little bit more discretion on the next natural disaster, having some money in an account to say, okay, right away, we can give you this funding to be able to get you back on your feet. Because inevitably, when we've had, disasters, whether it was the flood of 2010, whether it was Waverly, whether it was tornadoes, you see this lag where, you have all these volunteers that come out and help in the aftermath, but that insurance gets involved, the federal government gets involved, and none of that moves quickly. And then a lot of counties are kind of stuck in limbo until they can get some of that funding.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives over and has family over near Asheville, and like areas around, and you're a guy who loves to hike and do things, and you know where a lot of these spots are that were affected. Blowing Rock, North Carolina, basically got wiped off the map. So, I mean, when you look at what county governments are going to have to do, I mean, for instance, when they're trying to set up a budget and you have property that had been taxed at a certain rate that really is no longer there, that's a long-term issue that they're dealing with from a budgetary standpoint.
Huge. And then debris removal evidently has been a huge concern as well, to where, you finally can get, these crews in, they'll drag stuff to the road, but the county governments themselves just don't have the money to haul, these millions of pounds of debris away. And so hopefully this gets them towards the path of recovery, but you just know these communities are going to be forever changed.
Yeah, well, I mean, and what you talk about, the governor's disaster relief, that sounds, it sounds like what he wants there is to be able to have a quicker response when something happens. And I'm guessing that would be tied through TEMA at some level to where you've got to have some area within state government that could manage that, and that would seem to be the natural landing spot.
For sure. And like what we talked about before, it really comes to, the federal government's good about reimbursing money, but some, especially, like Davidson County, Rutherford County, may be able to pull some money up front to be able to handle these sort of things.
But you get to Anderson County or wherever, Unicoi. Unicoi is a great example there in those areas. So, it's, and the people that I talk, you just can't we had the flood here in 2010 and it was bad, but it did not wipe towns off the map. So that is something that is ongoing, and people still living in tents and things like that. It's something we never want to see anybody have to deal with. So, I'm glad that they're doing something there. You mentioned immigration issues that were tied into the special session. Kind of tell folks exactly what they put in place to try to be in line with what President Trump's federal standards or laws were going to be.
The big thing is basically creating a Tennessee border czar, a chief immigration officer within the Department of Safety at the state of Tennessee.
Keep those crazy Kentuckians out of here.
That's right. That's right. But basically a liaison with the federal government to be able to directly communicate with D.C. on different immigration-related policies. So this would be a completely new program. And essentially they also put in a sunset provision of where this program would automatically end at the end of the Trump administration. It could be renewed and continued if they feel like they need it. But they felt like there was not a direct liaison with federal immigration enforcement as this evidently becomes more and more of a focus into the Trump administration. The other thing that I think was really interesting, and this was more of not necessarily as big of a policy change, but there is a provision in this bill that says if, say, the Rutherford County Commission voted to enact some sort of sanctuary city policy, which is against state law, by the way, that the lawmakers themselves could be subject to a felony for breaking Tennessee law because sanctuary city policies are against state law. And so John Vile actually with MTSU had a great column on this in the Tennessee Lookout today with great, this is a really paradigm shift. We've never seen lawmakers potentially up for a felony for voting their conscience, whether you agree with that or not. That's kind of a line that hasn't been crossed.
Yeah, that seems to be something about, there seems to be some freedom of speech issues there.
For sure, and I think we will see a court challenge with that provision of the bill. The other one that I think will get, that will have kind of more of a policy impact on direct people is it would be a change to the state ID to where if you are a non-citizen, you would have some sort of demarcation on the ID that says you are not a citizen. This is supposed to be able to help local election officials that don't necessarily have the resources to be able to check everybody's citizenship status, to be able to see when they register to vote on their ID directly if they are a citizen or not. So those are some of the changes.
Well, and I think, when you start talking about immigration issues, the word trafficking comes into play, whether it is human trafficking or whether it is drug trafficking. And we have all driven up and down I-40 and seen those black vehicles that in the median in Tennessee, you have two interstates in particular that are huge corridors, one north and south with I-65 and one east and west with I-40, which gets a lot of focus about whether it is human trafficking or drug trafficking. And I'm not sure that any of that is tied into these actual laws that they've brought up now, but it all kind of fits, kind of dovetails in together.
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard presentations talk about, like you said, Chip, when you have as huge of an artery as I-65 and I-40 meeting in really the cross-section of the country, Nashville, it makes us, unfortunately, a part of these huge trafficking rings. And I know that there's been legislation specifically targeted on that, filed and passed in previous legislative sessions. It's definitely a concern.
Yeah. Kind of heading back to education, hitting some quick topics that may be coming up within the regular session. One is cell phone usage in schools. It's going to require, if it passes, all school districts would come up with their own protocols that prohibit usage of cell phones in schools during instructional time. I try to think who's against that,
Well, I think one thing that could be really interesting and a tragic example of this, but after Antioch High School
Right.
and their shooting a few weeks ago, we heard from so many parents that were comforted by the fact they could directly reach their student through a cell phone.
Well, there
say,
you go.
Hey, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that may come up in debate. I don't know. It's a vexing problem for educators, right? These parents want to be able to be in contact with their students if they need them, but at the same time, they can certainly serve as distractions to education, can cause problems. And so that's where, making the laws get tricky of, unintended consequences. So I think that one will get some protracted debate and may not fall along party lines, which is where things get interesting up there. Sometimes these topics go beyond, political parties and, rural districts may have much different concerns about this than more urban and suburban. So we'll see how that plays out.
Well, and you being the son of a teacher, these are kind of near and dear to your heart. One, bill has been filed. Yusuf Hakim of Chattanooga has filed a bill that would increase the amount given to teachers for classroom supplies. His bill would increase that amount from $200 to $500 per year, and it does not have a Senate sponsor at the time of this piece of information that I got. But I hear story after story after story of teachers who go into their own pockets to come up with necessities for their classroom, not extras, but for the necessities in their classroom. And here's one that I think everything has a financial tag to it, but and you're more than doubling what teachers would be getting. But I would think there would be a good bit of support on that if they're able to get it to the floor. I don't know what the black box is here that would knock it down, but just I don't know.
As you mentioned, my mom's a teacher, and my dad jokes that the Amazon truck's in their driveway about every other day for supplies for students.
Right.
Of just basic, like you said, basic things, pencils, things that you need to have to be able to learn that some of these students aren't able to bring with them because of their home background. I think that is something where the legislature gets interesting, Chip, is we will know on Monday which some of these bills will have an easy track and which ones will have much harder. Because on Monday, Governor Bill Lee will give his State of the State address. And along with that, the Budget Office will release the official proposed state budget. And if you see your provision listed in the budget, you have a much easier track. If you don't see a provision like this listed in the budget, then you're going to have to convince your lawmakers throughout the session to be able to add it to the budget. And there's only so much money to go around. And so we will have a much clearer idea on a lot of these bills, especially if they have a significant cost to them, of which ones have the green light that have a much easier path. And if it's not included in the budget, then they're going to have to really use all the political maneuvering in their toolbox to be able to get it on. And sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, one I think that hits home to a lot of people is school lunches, and there's been a bill filed that would make free breakfast and lunch at schools required at all public schools across the state, and that's one that would have a price tag to it.
It certainly would. The federal government does help quite a bit with those lunch programs if there's an economic need. Direct, but I think you see a lot of students kind of in that bubble of maybe don't qualify at home, but it's still hard to be able to get a meal to be able to qualify. And so, I think that's one that we'll see a lot of debate on. But once again, it kind of comes down to what they're willing to fund in the budget.
Now, here's one that does not have a big price tag, but I think there will be some debate on it. Scott Sapicki of Murray County has filed a bill that would increase the amount of physical activity required for students. Fans of the bill have dubbed it the Say Yes to Recess bill. It would require 60 minutes of physical activity per day for elementary school students and 90 minutes per week for middle and high school students. And knowing Scott a little bit, he comes from an athletic background and has a son that plays football, and so I know where he's coming from on that, and I think that's something that not every kid likes recess, but I think I think the feeling is good there, but you're going to have those who say, okay, that's taking away from classroom time. So, I guess it comes to where is the balance?
That bill has a fascinating backstory. So it's actually a group of 3 Clarksville moms that were able to successfully convince the school board up in Montgomery County, where I'm from, to guarantee that recess would go from at least Clarksville used to have the requirement of just 15 minutes to go to 30 minutes. And they decided that that was an idea that needed to, one, grow even just beyond 30 minutes to an hour, like you mentioned, but go statewide. So this is an example of 3 moms that have been working the Capitol Hill circuit, trying to find a lawmaker that might agree with them. They found one in Representative Scott Sapicki and are really hoping that this bill will pass. You touched on the issue, though, Chip. There are state standards, there are federal standards for education that dictate then the amount of classroom time and what they have to reach, and the standards they have to reach within a school day. So we'll see if this year is the year they can get that done. But I do love the fact that this started as just an idea around a dinner table amongst some moms going, can't you tell a difference when our kids get to go out for recess and when they don't?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to step aside, get our jumping jacks in here during the commercial break, and we'll be back with our final segment. Chris Davis of News Channel 5 joins us today. Back with more here on the Roundtable on WGNS.
Are you a parent of a 2 to 8-year-old? Listen closely for an exciting offer, then head to abcmouse.com/radio to learn more. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
We're offering a promo at abcmouse.com/radio to try it for free for a month, then $14.99 per month until canceled. Go to abcmouse.com/radio to see this offer. That's abcmouse.com/radio. Actual ABC Mouse users compensated for their testimonials, sponsored by Age of Learning.
When it comes to protecting my family's future, I want a life insurance company that's at the top of their game. That's why I got same-day coverage through Ethos. There was no paperwork, no waiting around, and no medical exam. I just answered a few health questions online, and Ethos set me up with a $3 million policy for about $2 a day. Go to checkethos.com and get it done today. That's CHECKETHOS.com. Checkethos.com. Sample rates is a 10-year term life policy for 35-year-old healthy non-smoking male. Billed monthly.
For home restoration at a price you can afford, trust the professionals at Farrah Construction to get the job done on time and within your budget. Farrah Construction can remodel your home or can update your kitchen, bath, or other rooms. I'm Ron Hall. If you can dream it, Farrah Construction can turn it into reality. Call Farrah Construction at 615-893-6120. Shop local. Let our family business help you. Farrah Construction Company.
This is Kim Dunaway from Sunshine Nutrition Center. You hear me on Monday mornings at 7:20 talking about how to lead a healthier lifestyle. We carry supplements, personal care, and grocery items at both our Murfreesboro and Smyrna locations, family owned and operated since 1989.
At Bud's Tire Pros, we sell all major brands of tires, and we invite you to stop by today for that next set of tires. Or maybe you need us to check out your vehicle before you head out of town. We offer everything from brakes to batteries, alignments, and more. No appointments necessary. Just stop on by.
I'm Allison Mitchell with Bud's Tire Pros. We're located on East Main Street, exactly 3 miles from the town square, 1 mile past Rutherford Boulevard. Visit us online at budstirepros.tn.com.
Did you know that participating in Murfreesboro Special Census could help bring more funding to our city? This is Mayor Shane McFarland. An accurate population count means more shared state revenue for things like road repairs, park improvements, and new sidewalks. It's quick and easy. Visit murfreesborocensus.com or look for a letter from the city with a prepaid return envelope.
Count me in.
Okay, count me in.
And count me in too.
Help Murfreesboro get its fair share. Visit murfreesborocensus.com, complete the special census today, and you could qualify for a $100 gift card.
Premier 6 Theater on Broad in Jackson Heights.
Let's all go to the movies.
Check out what's showing at murfreesboromovies.com. Popcorn popped fresh daily.
Movies like the good old famous days.
Premier 6 on Broad in Jackson Heights.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at wgnsradio.com.
Chris Davis of News Channel 5 joins us today. He's the Capitol Hill reporter, and he is about to get busy as the governor's State of the State will be next Monday, as he mentioned. Any talk amongst the Capitol Hill press corps of what, now that the voucher bill has been passed, what is the governor looking to do to set the table for his final 2 years in this being his second term?
You know, that's really interesting, Chip. They hit so many big bills in the special session. I think a lot of us are wondering, okay, what is left? Have been 400 bills or so filed, I think, even since we left the special session. So I know there will be plenty to talk about. But, it's funny, kind of from a presentation standpoint, the governor's office usually always goes a little mum for the weeks leading up to the State of the State so that he can make some news. And so I asked him at the end of the special session, because he usually does a news conference to wrap things up, said, hey, what can we look forward to in the regular session? It was you'll hear more on Monday, February 10th. So we'll just have to, I guess, see what is kind of headlining his agenda when he gives his State of the State. With just the economic state of where we are, just in general, what are you hearing from because the only thing that the legislature is required to do is pass a budget. And so obviously you have to, how are state revenues? Obviously we're in such a fortunate spot for tourism, and Mother Nature has blessed us with great areas for people wanting to come here. People still want to move here. So any forecasting on what the budget is going to look like? That's interesting, Chip, and I think that'll actually be a big storyline up at the Capitol this year. So starting last year, and it sounds like it's continuing this year, certainly revenue is not falling in Tennessee because of all the reasons you said, but it is starting to stagnate. And so, from, I would say roughly off the top of my head, from like 2016 to 2022, especially in the post-COVID years, we saw state revenue leap up to where they could almost double the state budget in Governor Lee's term. We're now starting to see that plateau a little bit. And so that, a lot of lawmakers have never been up on the Hill when they've had that. We've always just had, surging revenue. So that's caused them to pull back on a few, reoccurring expense-related bills. So I think you'll see the lawmakers do a lot of one-time expense bills because then they know, we don't have to pay this next year. But that's where things will get interesting. We will get to hear a lot more of that on Monday when the official budget is released along with the State of the State. But I expect, especially I think inflation has really caused a lot of state revenues to stagnate, to kind of flatten out. And so we'll get an update on Monday, but I imagine that's what they're going to say. Obviously there are ways, obviously sales tax in Tennessee is a huge thing. And in the past, we've had the tax-free weekends for educational, materials, school clothes, things like that. We've even had the grocery tax has had a bit of a moratorium. And I saw in one article I was reading that there is one proposal that would, look to roll back some of the grocery tax more permanently. Is that lingering out there? I think that has real traction. We have seen Republican leadership get behind that. That is a bill that Democrats have been trying for several years. Their idea, though, incorporated another form of a corporate tax that Republicans weren't interested in. Republicans are now saying, the last I've heard, is you may not see a blanket no sales tax on groceries whatsoever, but you might see a pullback on Whole Foods. So not the brand, but actual food. So apples and raw ingredients may no longer be taxed in Tennessee. But prepared foods would still and processed. Exactly. Yeah. Right. The other tax that gets fiddled with in addition to sales taxes is property taxes, and they're
Tennessee is a zero net state, and as far as property taxes on the county level, but the state then controls what is the cap on what property taxes can be, and that is one area. If they are looking to raise revenue, that is an area that they could flirt with a little bit.
They could. There's an interesting constitutional amendment that would say, at one point, I think back in the early 1900s, we had a state property tax in addition to the county property tax. There are a few lawmakers that are trying to run a constitutional amendment that would prevent the state from ever raising that state property tax again. The argument being they haven't done it in 100 years. Why would they need to? But this would kind of protect it in the Constitution not to. But yeah, I think a lot of lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are trying to find that right balance of getting enough money to be able to do the services that they need, but to give Tennesseans a relief where they can. You just can't cut that too much. You can't turn off the spigot too much, otherwise some of these state resources that people rely on can't be funded. And
a couple of other technology issues. In 2020, the General Assembly created the Emergency Broadband Fund to accelerate broadband accessibility. That was due to some of that was due to COVID, but there's also been rural broadband initiatives across the state. That, and coupled with how is the state going to deal with artificial intelligence? Those things those are items that are going to pop up.
Absolutely. I think we have some sort of broadband bill and some sort of AI bill filed every session, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon, because these on the broadband issue, I think just so much of society now relies on internet access, and for these counties that don't have, it's expensive for these companies to come in and build up the network. It makes sense to do it in Rutherford County. You go out into the rural areas where there aren't as many paid subscribers, the government has to juice that a little bit to be able to get to happen. So I think we'll continue to see funding for that. AI, that's just moving so quickly. The lawmakers every year are like, oh, I didn't even know that was going to be an issue. We need to file legislation on it. I think that's one of those complicated topics where things are in such flux. We're going to be talking about these bills for a long time.
Something you touched on earlier, and let's talk about roads. I can remember when Tennessee they touted for year after year after year that Tennessee interstates were the best in the country. We haven't seen that, and as a matter of fact, there's been more, how we're going to fill the potholes and things like that. The ability to keep roads with more and more traffic and the construction, all of that going on, that is a huge part of the budget. Once you get past education, you start looking at roads. That's the next big line item. Between that and kind of talk in general about roads, and then we'll kind of dive into the choice lanes a little bit and where that stands and what it means.
Well, the problem, some would say it's an asset, some would say it's a problem, but Tennessee is one of the few states in the country that does not borrow money to build state roads and interstates and highways. So we have to just use whatever is in the budget. Other states may use bonds, may use loans, may do other kind of financing
toll
options
roads
to be able to keep up. And so in toll roads as well. But even just borrowing from the bank, Tennessee doesn't do that. We have to have cash on hand. And so I think that's a model that certainly worked, decades ago. It may be harder for Tennessee to keep up in modern day with as much traffic as Tennessee now sees. And so Governor Lee's solution was to do these, what they're calling choice lanes, is to be able to have another revenue source to be able to rely on. I think another issue, Chip, is that, gas tax really funds a lot of the road construction in Tennessee. And as we maybe see a little bit more of a progression towards electric vehicles, they're going to lose some of that funding as well.
And it's interesting, I think, under the current administration that, it will be interesting to see, because I think before Elon Musk got in with Donald Trump, that, Trump was not so hot on electric vehicles. Well, he brings in a guy who makes electric vehicles. So that will be interesting to for sure. The choice between Murfreesboro and Nashville on I-24, the first thing that happened was the smart corridor that has, if you go and you see all these tall poles, they have cameras that all feed into a computer system somewhere that Vanderbilt came up with, and to try to regulate speeds at different parts of I-24 to help traffic flow even better. So, and whether people follow the that or not, I don't know. But to me, it's I don't travel it all the time, but it seems to me that it's at least doing something. When there's not a wreck, if it's just congestion and all that. But the smart choice or the smart court or the choice lanes, explain how that would work if it comes to fruition.
So they have already kind of gotten the green light to start this. It's a multi-year process. It would probably be 6 or 7 years before we actually see these implemented. But basically, they're going to construct additional lanes, but it would be 2 or 3 or 4 lanes that are dedicated just as toll lanes, as kind of express routes around the traffic. So if you've got an appointment in Nashville that you just can't be late to, you could pay $6, say whatever. It would be fluid pricing based off of demand, but you could pay money to go into one of those lanes to bypass traffic. They think that there'll be people that just hate traffic so much they're willing to pay that amount, and that would be revenue for the state. It would also maybe free up some cars from the regular lanes, but that's where there's been a lot of debate.
Well, and they're already doing that in Florida with the Sun Pass and all that kind of stuff. As this session gets underway, and you mentioned already, they've hit the big topics already in the special session. What do you think is going to gain the biggest traction and be the biggest attraction during this session?
That is a hard prediction to make.
Besides the soap opera between Brother Jones and Cameron Sexton.
Well, that is one that never goes away. But I don't know, Chip. I think that's most years you can kind of go, oh, this is going to be the bill. Because they tackled so many, I don't know if I have a ready answer for you. Maybe chat with me on Monday. We'll see what the governor says.
I think it's pretty safe to say that the voucher bill is what Governor Lee wanted to leave office as his legacy.
No question. He wanted that to be his signature legislation. That's why he fought so hard for it. He even really ran on it back when he came into office back in 2019. So he wants this to be his legacy.
Yeah. Now, he has 2 years left, so there will be posturing, and already we're starting to hear some whispers about who will be in the running in 2 years for the governor's office. And honestly, I was a little surprised because we'd heard Mark Green's name had popped up. Glenn Jacobs, a.k.a. Kane from WWE fame, the mayor of Knox County, and who is a rising star in the Republican Party. But all of a sudden here, within the last month, Marsha Blackburn's name has popped up as a potential candidate for governor, and Glenn Jacobs said if she runs, he's out. And so how much realness is there to that, or was that just political chatter around the inauguration?
I think Senator Blackburn, from everything I've heard, is really taking a deep consideration into this. I think maybe a pride in being the first female governor of Tennessee may be a part of it, or even maybe being a little bit closer to home versus being up in D.C. But she's been calling state lawmakers saying, I think I want to do this. Would you support me? And I think that will have a chilling effect on other candidates jumping into the race. She's got a lot of name recognition. She's got a lot of money in the bank. She's got a lot of supporters. And she plays a very pivotal role up on Tennessee's Capitol Hill, funding a lot of these campaigns. So it's hard for a lot of these people to tell her no. So I think we have heard that Representative John Rose, a congressman, thinks he's still going to run no matter what. But some of the other names like Glenn Jacobs have said, maybe I'll wait and see if she actually runs or not.
Yeah. What about are the Democrats You know, have they need to mount a comeback somewhere to just make it interesting.
Yeah, I haven't heard any names so far, which will be interesting. But yeah, I think especially with it being an open race and not having an incumbent, they will want to run somebody. Just haven't heard who that somebody may be.
Gotcha. Well, what's on your agenda today? What's on the plate? I know you're going to find lunch good somewhere, especially if you get out somewhere like to Rutherford or Dixon, or you always find a good country store where you can get something good to eat.
Timing is always a factor, but yeah, if I can run into somewhere nice, really try to. I don't know what my fate is just yet. I'm going to run into the morning meeting after we're done with this and see. I've got a few ideas, but we'll see what lands.
All right, Chris, thanks so much. We always feel smarter once you've been on the show.
I've got you fooled, but thank you, Chip. I always enjoy being on here and being able to share with what's going on the Hill. It impacts so many people, so always glad when people know more about what their lawmakers are doing.
All right, thanks so much. All right, Chris Davis of News Channel 5 has been our guest today. Brian Barrett is standing by with Rutherford Issues. And keep it here all day long on the Big G, WGNS.
WGNS, Murfreesboro, Smyrna.
Chip Walters here with Exit Realty